Venti recently got buffs, and now he can actually play as a DPS, but is it any good? Let's talk about it. My name is Juice, and let's get into it. So, like I said, Venti got some actual substantial buffs, and now we've had them for a couple of weeks. So this begs the question, were these buffs actually any good, and did he actually end up getting saved as a character? And in practice, does he actually feel good to play? Well, in my experience, in regards to the character being saved, oh, absolutely, I don't even think it's close. I will say the first chamber of the current Abyss is indeed very well tailored to him, but even in the Abyss before that, I found that his performance was pretty good, and all around, he's actually a genuinely substantially strong DPS now. Obviously, he's not going to be as good as the best DPSs in the game, but he is actually competitive, and he is a really good Animo DPS. It feels really weird to say, but Venti actually does really solid damage. He is not underwhelming by any means, and it should be noted that I didn't even pull for a signature weapon, which I did want to do and I will hopefully do next time. The only reason I didn't do it this time is because I'm saving to get as many Varka copies as I am reasonably able to get. However, even without a signature weapon, other 5-star weapon options are honestly perfectly competent on him. I mostly played him using Aquas and Mulacra, and that's not really all that much worse than his new signature. So all around, I wasn't really underwhelmed by his damage performance whatsoever, even though his new signature is indeed his best in slot. So if you want to try him out, but you're worried that you don't really have a good weapon option for him, or you don't really want to commit to pulling the signature yet, you don't have to. You can very easily just put whatever 5-star bow you currently already have, and it's honestly going to be a perfectly good stat stick on him. Yes, his signature is his best, but you are more than easily going to be able to get away with using other options, so that's not really going to be a concern. I didn't really feel like he was any weaker because he didn't have specifically his signature. As expected, he is indeed a stellar AoE DPS, but he's also able to work quite nicely in single target too. And I will say, I really appreciate what Hoyo did by making his burst track the enemy, as opposed to you needing to run back and then hit the burst on the enemy itself. Now I will say, the enemy is still able to just move out of his burst radius. However, it is nice that most of the time, you're still going to be able to get some burst damage off on enemies, and it's especially nice whenever you're able to infuse it with something. Which, assuming you're playing him in his best assault DPSing team, would be with Durin, and then you would then get Pyro Infusion, and that would be very, very strong. For the most part, I did use him in his best in slot DPSing team, as I mostly specifically got Durin so that I could play DPS Venti at his finest, and so that I could eventually have Varka's best assault team whenever he releases down the line. So, with that in mind, I think that Durin and Venti are an absolutely fantastic combo. Like I just said, Durin is able to always have Venti's burst infused with Pyro, which is very strong, and they make a wonderful team. I'm super duper glad that I pulled for him over this. I will say that Durin does not have his signature, but he did have Mist Splitter on, and his talents aren't finished because I don't have any freaking Dream Solvents! So my Durin was stuck at 878. So it could honestly be even better than what I'm experiencing, not only because I could fix up Durin's talent some more, considering that Dream Solvents just hate me for some reason, they always have to be completely honest with you, but there's also potential for my own Venti to get better. I never really anticipated that DPS Venti would ever become a thing, so while I did have some very good pieces on him, his Goblet isn't double crit, and while his Sands does have 12% crit rate, it lacks any crit damage. So, while his stats are pretty good, they're not exactly as good as they could be, so there's some more room for improvement there. And I should also mention, there is always the potential for Hoyoverse to make a brand new set that suits Hex and Zirkel characters more, considering that they've added these buffs to the game, and consider that eventually, Varka is going to release down the line. So I wouldn't honestly be surprised if this wasn't the end of the road for Venti buffs. He's gotten his direct kit buffs, so now, I'm expecting that we're potentially going to get some kind of set for him, because I'd say that he could use a new one that focuses more on his DPSing playstyle. And another thing that I should mention is that they've already covered him for a signature weapon. In fact, if you look back throughout the entire game's history, Venti has had 3 separate signature weapons, 4 if you want to include Windbloom's Ode. So, I think they are basically done with making new Venti weapons. However, artifact sets, I still think there's something that they can do there. So there's more potential here, and what we already have is extremely powerful, and he can already be considered the best Animo DPS. Now, without Durin, I did still find him to be perfectly fine. You can mostly use Albedo or any other Hex and Zirkel character with him, and that's going to be a viable alternative. It's definitely not as strong, but it's still something that you can do. And if you don't have Farazan, or you just don't want to risk going for C6 Farazan because of the horrors that is pulling for a C6 4-star, yeah, completely fair by the way, then other supports are still going to work fine there. It's not going to break the Hex and Circle buffs. Farazan is going to be the best for Venti's personal damage, of course, but you can still stick somebody like Lady Farina in the back of a team, and it's going to work quite well. All around, you can even shove Albedo into the team, and it's going to be good. Ultimately, you're not limited to using Farazan, even if she is the ideal option here. So if your Farazan isn't C6 and you just don't really want to risk it, don't feel bad about that. You don't really have to worry about it. Wait until your Farazan is C6 and just use another support in the 4th slot instead. You will be fine, trust me. I think Durin is the real key here. Venti, even without Durin, is still strong, by the way, because you can just use Albedo or any other Hex and Circle character and it's going to pan out just fine. But I would say that Durin is definitely the strongest boost that you can give your DPS Venti right now, because while his own signature is good, like I said, we just have so many other good 5-star bow options that you're not really strapped for choice. You have plenty of other things that you can pick that are going to be of a high sufficient enough power level, whereas Durin is definitely Venti's best in slot teammate and definitely helps him out the most in that regard. I think it is extremely safe to say that Venti was absolutely saved as a character, because not only does he have potential to be even stronger later down the line, but as he currently is, anybody who pulled for Venti in the past and felt like they had no use for him outside of some niche use cases, finally has a reason to pull him out again and actually have him functioning as a core member of their account. He is actually going to be able to serve basically every player now to some extent, and I think that is absolutely wonderful. So yes, not only have they absolutely saved the character, but any older players who pulled for him before, good job, you now officially have the best Animo DPS on your account, and if you were intending to pull for Durin, well then you've just sweetened the deal for yourself even further. Excellent. And I would say that if you're somebody that's newer, and you're fond of Venti and you're hoping to pull for him, well then once again, he is actually a pretty good option. And I do believe that going into the future, whenever Venti gets reruns, he is always going to remain, as at the very least, a decent option. I will say that I do expect Varka to probably be a better Animo DPS than him down the line, but I also expect him to probably use Venti as a support. I say this because I'm expecting the Venti Durin core to eventually be a part of Varka's best team core. Now, obviously, we literally don't have anything on Varka yet, but come on, let's just put 2 and 2 together. They're releasing a Mondstadt character in a couple months from now, and they're releasing these buffs that mostly affect Mondstadt characters. I think it's safe to say that Varka is probably going to be a part of the whole Hex and Circle thing, and there is a high chance that he is probably going to benefit from having Venti on his team. I would be surprised if not. Now, obviously, I cannot confirm future value for something that's just not happened yet, but I do personally believe that Venti is probably going to get another pull value upscale whenever Varka drops, because it is very likely that he is going to be able to work in his teams, if not be best in slot within said team. But even just as of now, if you were to cut all of that out, and let's say that what we have here is all we're getting, we're not even going to get a new artifact set or anything like that, well then yeah, the character is still effectively saved. Hoyoverse actually managed to address his core issues and make him a good character. And as for whether he feels good to play in practice, I will say this. A world where Venti does well in single target situations is not really a world I expected to live in. Obviously, he does better in AoE situations, but the mere fact that you can take Venti into a boss chamber and kill the boss within a reasonable amount of time with him at a reasonable amount of character investment, I think that's really impressive. That's great in my opinion, and considering how Abyss is starting to favor using specific elemental teams, having your Animo DPS covered is a really nice thing. Now obviously Genshin has always favored using specific elements, but I would say in recent times, they've been pushing that even more. For example, the boss on 12.3.1 right now really wants you to ideally use pyro characters against it, etc, etc. So if you already had Venti, well then your Animo DPS is basically covered. And in terms of gameplay feel, I personally think it feels very good. You get to use his normal attacks, they gave him some visual enhancements, so his animations look a little bit nicer now. Like I mentioned before, he actually automatically targets his burst to where the enemy is, and it actually works quite nicely, at least in my experience, the targeting basically always works out properly. His skill does really nice damage, and I think it was a good idea to extend his burst duration by doing the DPS normal attacks. Honestly, it was a very simple fix that they did here. They didn't really add a whole lot to his kit, nor did they necessarily make him a complex DPS to play. He's very, very basic, and anyone can pick him up. But I don't think they had to do anything more than this. I'm really happy with these buffs, and as somebody who's been a Venti fan for a really long time, like Venti used to be my favorite character just out of anything for like 3 or 4 years. I was crazy about him. I'm really happy that the dude got these buffs. It is so nice to see that Venti is finally getting the respect he deserves. I do still think that he was somewhat underrated before, but the thing is, he was being called bad when he was just mid. That isn't really enough to turn any heads. But now, he's actually substantially good, and that is enough for people to realize, okay, this character is actually worth people's time now. So, with that in mind, I am glad that he has been promoted to a status where he is actually a competent DPS now. He feels better to play, he feels a lot stronger to play, the gameplay feels very nice, and all around, he's quite versatile in terms of teams. Hopefully this video was able to tell you whether the Venti buffs were actually good or not. This has been Juice, signing out, and at last, we once again live in a timeline where I can say that Venti is a better character than Raiden Shogun.